When the pandemic hits, we all thought, that's it. This will be the death of theater. What makes matter worse is how people keep on coming to uncreative, unoriginal blockbuster because they need to see it on the big screen, leaving all the independent films almost no chance to be enjoyed. But oh boy, 2022 just proved us wrong. Why? How many great films are there this year, ranging from great independent films into unexpected emotional blockbusters that show cinema are not dead? It is truly a challenge to pick what movies come on the top of the hill this year. But I'm all up for the challenge, and today we're going to pick the top 10 films of 2022. And so, this is a cinema lens. So, welcome back to a Cinema Lens podcast, and 2022. What a year it is. I really think it's an exciting year for film. I did not expect this to come because in 2021, I really have a very bad experience in films, and in my opinion, I personally found most of the films didn't connect to me, and I can't really blame it due to the pandemic. But 2022, like, you find the balance between this creative and independent film. No, you find this balance between creative independent films and movies that really made for the big screen. And both of them really put their heart into the creation. I really felt like most of these films are made for me and for the audience because I really love it so much, and I really saw the enthusiastic response from them actually. And so before I start the list, there are certain films that if you're expecting to find on this list, they absolutely won't because I haven't seen it yet. These films are X, Pearl, Cha-Cha Real Smooth, The Whale, Stealing Raden Saleh, Woman Talking, Till, Han, The Woman King, Armageddon Time, and Holy Spider. For some reason, I haven't got time. It's been a busy year for me as I finally back on directing a short film, but for the most part of it, the film just haven't been released yet, or maybe it won't be released at all in my home country in Indonesia or in the country I'm currently studying in Korea. And unfortunately, this will be a very unfair list to not include those films, and so I would definitely watch these films later. And you're still interested in my updated ranks, you could see it on my Letterboxd, a Cinema Lens. Without further ado, let's go. Number 10, The Fablements. As an aspiring filmmaker, we always have a tendency to stick with write what we know. And so, in the beginning, we'll try to write about films. It could be personal, but most of the time, people will find it just so cliche, just so repetitive and uninspiring. This is especially true in short film industry. But The Fablements, it is one of those rare films to capture the magic, the wonder of cinema. Just how the young main character, Sammy, was just so astounded to look at the moving pictures on his hand as a projector screen. And it felt like an epiphany of joy, a spectacle that almost can't be described into words for him and for us as well. With the film being based on an autobiography of Steven Spielberg's childhood, you actually kind of know where it will going. But Spielberg really iterated that one thing, that film should be magical. And we kind of forgot about that, because I think the timing of Spielberg releasing this film has just never been close to perfect, where we become accustomed to franchise of high-budget films using green screen for something that shouldn't need any green screen. It's like they forget sometimes the simplest things are just the most precious thing, because the simplest thing, just putting on a facial expression in the frame, speaks a lot more than a background being changed from green screen into something that we thought it exists, but it didn't exist. But it doesn't really talk much about it. This is actually highlighted in one of the film sequences where Sammy is making inspired Western film and the audience saw behind the skin of the production, And there's just no green screen, almost no lighting equipment, creating the dust effect with creative touch with a small number of amateur crew and cast, And seeing the scene give me joy and sadness of how does the cinema really change now, But again, what makes this film really works is how much Steven Spielberg put its own personal experience of emotion and sincerity into this film. Well, granted, I have to admit that this film only works because of the name Steven Spielberg himself. If it's not, or if it was made at the early of his career, then this wouldn't be as emotional as the film is. But again, I was already amazed of the quality of the film. I found that this film really captures the magic of cinema, and most people already know Steve Spielberg's troubled childhood, but it still works, and I really have to give credit to that, because it's a really inspiring for aspiring filmmakers like me as well. And if you're an aspiring filmmaker or just an aspiring artist trying to make your debut into the industry or such, this is a film that definitely you should watch because it captures the magic of art, especially cinema. Number 9, Autobiography. This is a film that perhaps was unknown for you listeners or watchers, aside from Indonesian audience or hardcore film festival fan, because I was so lucky to get a chance to watch it on the Bursa International Film Festival. And it also has swept a lot of awards across other film festivals. And the plot is actually very simple because it involves a young man working as a housekeeper in an empty mansion in a small town. Then the owner of the mansion, a general he is, come back for a campaign for a mayor election. That when things start to get nasty as the young man become involved with corruption, power, and also a moral dilemma as a servant. It is a film with a very harsh social criticism, but are brought very subtly through the story and symbolism of the character. And it doesn't really let you cringe for being over the top like The Hun or Don't Look Up. Well, Don't Look Up is actually a very good film. And instead, I found it very chilling and disturbing despite the lack of disturbing content on screen. Because, as an Indonesian, I really felt that this is what I've been feeling throughout my life, living in Indonesia. And maybe at this point, perhaps you won't really understand if I didn't give a bit of our country history. Like, it's a long story, but in short, we had times where our country was run by a dictatorial system for 33 years. And just like any other dictator case, corruption would obviously happen. And it is such an unfortunate time, because even when those dark days are over, we're still being haunted by those past attitudes into the young society. Like me being influenced by those upper hand of those bad quality into us. And this actually very much a lot happened in Indonesia. And some even would describe this film like a scary non-horror film because of how it depicts accurately about us. And of course, this is just one of those big interpretations, and there's actually a lot to discuss. But we don't really have time to discuss this in one video. And for a debut, the director Makbul Mubarak really knows what he is doing. In the Q&A session, he said that he's been doing this for 5 years, and you could see the emotion of his feeling being translated into the screen from the cinematography, sound, performance, because the main performance by Kevin Ardilova as the servant and as Wendy Benningswara as the general make this film really convincing. Mr. Swara, especially, if you're watching this, you really put a very powerful charisma into your character, and it literally chills, I'm really afraid of what you really thought and how you depict. If you are trying to symbolize someone, you really depict this very, very good. Very, very great, actually. And my eyes just never take away the attention from the screen for the whole journey. It's again a very personal pick for its relatability, but trust me, there's really a masterful craftsmanship being put here. And I really do hope you guys could watch it if you have a chance. And if you're an audience in Indonesia, go watch it while you still have the chance, because last time I just saw in Instagram, there's just like a small amount of theater playing this film. You will have a chance, do watch it as fast as possible. Number 8, RRR. This is actually one of those two films in the list that I do not expect to enter the top 10. Because the first time I heard about RRR is when I'm like searching for the best film so far in the middle of the year, and RRR come out of the list. I was thinking like, how the fuck it could be there? Because when it comes to Indian action films, I really do have a negative stereotypes about it. Don't get me wrong, I really like Three Idiots, PK, The Lunchbox, Anadhun. No, these films are some Indian films that I really enjoy. But when it comes to action, nah, it's not for me. But you could actually blame the internet, but there's no denying how ridiculous Indian action films be for being so over the top. Especially when I saw a sequence ripping off the Terminator, and I just stopped laughing because I find it being too cringe. And honestly, RR still retain those quality, but damn, how much I really enjoy it. It feels like I'm watching Stephen Chow Kung Fu Hustle for the first time. And like how both of the main characters introduced is by one of them having to fight thousands of protesters, and the other one just fight a tiger. While both does get injured, they're still standing literally like you just see a Superman born on Earth. And that's just the whole beginning, because holy fuck, what's in SRR Rajamouli mind? What's in the director mind? And what I found it funny is that I felt like this unintentionally an antithesis to Hollywood action film that need to ground everything in reality, explaining how they got this power and just getting these unimaginative action sequences that we've been mostly seen over and over and over again. But here, it seems like he's saying, fuck it all. These characters are real-life heroes who save our country. That just made them having a bit of power-up and crush business empire. And the results were goddamn amazing. And another antithesis that I want to discuss is how they made them as a buddy, bro power, rather than turning into subtext sexual orientation as homosexuals. There's nothing really wrong about that, but I really miss those days where we could just see them as brothers, as best friends. One thing that I do really regret about this film is I can't watch this film in cinema. In my home country, it went straight to the big... No, it doesn't went to the big screen at all. It went straight to the streaming, but, I could really imagine just watching it enjoy at the big screen. You perhaps have seen the reaction on YouTube, how excited this audience are watching RRR, getting up from their seat and having a Natu dance battle while the song is playing in the background. The last time I remember a film getting this kind of reaction is at Avengers Endgame screening, And what's more fascinating is that RRR is a franchise or sequel of any sort. And to get that kind of applause and cheers from the audience is unbelievable to the eye. And I'm just so jealous I didn't get that experience at all. If you haven't watched RRR, do watch it. It's on Netflix, and you could get one of the best 3 hours of your lifetime. Number 7, 3,000 Years of Longing. For most, this is perhaps one of the most disappointing movies critically and financially this year, especially coming from the infamous director George Miller. But for me, it's a film that deserves to be on this list. It speaks on what if Aladdin's genie longed for love. It recounts the story of a jinn played by Idris Elba as he told his tragic story to the one who set him free, Tilda Swinton. And from the visionary director George Miller, the visual is marvelous, eye-catching. I really like the colorful visuals. I can't really take my eyes out of it. Idris Elba and Tilda Swinton's chemistry are on spot too, and never really thought that they could fit so perfectly together as a character who really longed for something else. But honestly, that's just the sprinkles on top of the ice cream for 2,000 Years of Longing to be in this list. And maybe most would disagree with me, but I think this film has a poignant storytelling that are so relatable and relevant to the times we're living now. It's a story about reminding us on what does it mean to be a social being. That through Jin's personal journey and the people they meet, everybody has the same wishes and desire to be loved, to be noticed. George Miller really explored this tender side of human, the psychological of social being. But even if you don't get deeply into that point, it is a fresh fairy tale that really suited for adults going through midlife crisis or such. And a very daring one in it to make this kind of story. And I really do wish that this film got more attention than it should, because George Miller isn't only born to make Mad Max films. Number 6, After Sun. This is a film that doesn't really give a good impression, no, a good first impression to me, because I have to admit that I do look at the film in the wrong perspective, where I just see the film uses plot twists for the sake to make the film more impactful. But the more I thought about it, I was so wrong, and it's a film that slowly creeps into my thoughts every day. And I think the best way to describe the film, which I also find the YouTuber Thomas Flight thought about the film, is to see like an abstract artwork where you got the bigger picture of the message, but when you just see more into details of the making and subtle hidden intention painted on the canvas, you become much more invested to the emotion of it. It fits perfectly because we're seeing this from the POV of an 11-year-old girl, Sophie, who's so attentive to the world but doesn't really understand how the world does work. And so when we see his father Callum doing some Tai Chi, having a meditation book, giving some subtle hint about his feeling, even with his facial expression, you kind of get the meaning and feeling but never could really understand what's going on. The depiction that Charlotte Wells did in her debut was stunningly spectacular. We're brought into this slow, sweet, relaxing holiday, and it does feel like we're having a trip with them. Being so immersed in the world while also exploring a very deep yet resonant theme into the relationship between the father and his child. Why it also works, I think, is because the two main leads do carry the film so well. Paul Mescal and Frankie Corio did a very splendid job portraying the complexity of their character. Paul Mescal especially, he really do deserve the award. And if you haven't had any chance of watching the film, this film is now available on Movie, not sponsored, but I do recommend you guys go check out this film immediately. And if you're guys watching this from Korea, this film is now playing in theaters. Now, before I continue the list, I would like to give an appreciation to filmmaker making blockbuster movie this year, as perhaps it still says that blockbuster is not yet actually that. After the pandemic hit, film mostly went on to video on demand streaming service, and the one that goes to the big screen are just blockbusters. But I do feel like after 2019 Avengers Endgame, there's just a tiredness of blockbuster. We're being so drained with these big films. And I talked with some of my friends where they do feel the meaning of blockbuster become a tired and uninspired sequel, remakes, lazy filmmaking and such made by big corporate for money. But this year is different. There are films like Batman, Avatar: The Way of Water, Top Gun: Maverick, and other critically acclaimed 2022 blockbuster movies that might not enter the top 10 of this list. But nevertheless, I think we should give credit to them for revitalizing the blockbuster. And these films are undeniably massive in scale, involving pushing technology forward, or if not crazy practical effect effort that are put into the process. And such I really could see the dedication they put through into these movies that are designed to be commercial but nevertheless put their heart into the craft and artwork. And you can't help but to applaud James Cameron's effort to film CG underwater, or the cast of Top Gun learn how to fly a combat airplane, or giving Batman into much more closer to the comic adaptation that fans are dying for. I'm not saying that there are several disappointing blockbusters or movies failed to be a blockbuster this year, but indeed, some of the films I mentioned do need to be highlighted to make one of the best year of films. And so, give applause to them. And now, back to the topic. Number 5, Missing Home, or Ngeri-ngeri Sedap. Aside from RRR, this is the second film that comes out of a surprise on this list, because when you look at the technical side, this is the most so-so films with okay cinematography, not so really smooth editing and sound editing, but what wins my heart, I think, is really the story of the film. When I heard the premise of the film, it feels so absurd. So it tells an elderly married couple living in a small town in Sumatra near the Lake Toba, and all of their kids are already left the small town to pursue their own life. So to make sure that they have a family reunion, The couple both plan to fake a divorce, and I should say that honestly, it's perhaps one of the rare trailers that I laughed my heart out. But within that abstract premise is a film deeply personally rooted for the director himself, Benedict Raja Guguk. As a man who comes from a Batak tribe that really values tradition and culture, this is a very deep film about culture versus globalization, about family relationship and trauma, and how do, in this rapidly world, parents and children should try to adapt to the society and understand each other's generation. But instead of taking a more dark road to the film, I think this is a very light-hearted film with several great sequences showing Batanese culture, and despite the cultural barrier that audience should have faced, because I'm myself, I'm not a Batak people. Even though I'm in Indonesia, I'm not from their tribe. But Benedict are able to translate it well for the general audience. And so, when the film should hit the emotional tone of it, we, the audience, just wanted to cry with them as well. And shout out as well to the actors playing in the film, because if you come from Indonesia, you might be pessimistic of the actor cast if they could deliver great acting due to their background in comedy. But this, they really show that they're actors, and kudos to them. And fortunately, Netflix bought the film rights, so you can watch and stream this film on Netflix. So please do check this film out. I promise you won't regret it. And I mean, it got into the top 20 in Letterboxd, so it shouldn't be really a disappointment, isn't it? Number 4, Decision to Leave. After 6 years, Park Chan-wook finally back making feature films, and you could say that this is so different from what he had made before. When we hear the name Park Chan-wook, we always thought about his graphic violence, absurd sex scene, dark, mostly dry comedy style instead. But there's almost none of this trademark in this film. I'm even surprised that it got a 15 rating in Korea as opposed to the 18 rating. Even so, it doesn't mean that it's bad. Well, if it's bad, it shouldn't be on this list. And it tells a story of a married detective who is so obsessed with his job, where he received a case of a murder involving an immigrant from China who become a prime suspect of the murder. But slowly they bond and become very complex love relationship between the enforcer and suspect criminal. And made by Park Chan-wook, you know that this isn't your usual crime thriller. The cinematography and editing, everything is just so beautiful. Everything feels like a painting. Never have I really thought a shot involving phone conversation could be so innovative and interesting to be looked at. And covered by a lot on video analysis on how Park Chan-wook uses visual cues on his cinematography to distract audience and giving subtle hint on symbolism. This makes this film worth to watch repeatedly and to analyze the film. And both the cast, Park Hae-il and Tang Wei, chemistry portrayed on screen are so great yet tragic, making them suitable for each other. But Tang Wei performance, my god, she should have been nominated within a lot of major awards for me. The complexity, the secret she put beneath in her facial expression. While it's true that we're seeing this from Park Hae-il's perspective, how convincing Tang Wei gives her performance is so unbelievable. Truly one of the best performances in 2022. And again, if you thought this is your usual crime thriller, then you're so wrong. Park managed to make this film more than it, a very poetic ballad projected into the screen, making your emotion up and down, putting it high above the bar among other crime romantic thriller. If you're curious about it, again, not sponsored, but this film is now available on Mubi. Number 3, Marcel the Shells with Shoes On. If it's only for the cuteness, then this film definitely won't be in the list, because Marcel the Shell with Shoes On offers far more thought than just being a talking shell with one eye. Filmed in a documentary style, I become engaged with Marcel's daily life, how he navigates around the house, getting water and supplies to live. He only lives there with his grandma, Nana Koni. We audience love to be interacting with something new, and I believe that's why we became obsessed with the concept of multiverse and what if. But then, Marvel shows us in the world he lives in using human resources creativity, really what he could offer to be practical in life, and that's something I really love about the film. But then it dives deep more into philosophical thought about the meaning of life itself. It also tackles deeper on the power of social media and how the misuse of it could shape someone's perspective on life. And this is much tackled in dry and black humor, which is very soothing for me. I mean, when Marcel argued to Dean if he felt that if he's just wasting his life by capturing footage on camera, I really lost it. I love it. I love it with all my heart. And it feels more like us as the audience capturing our own child in his coming of age journey. And in the end, Marcel will grow into a more mature character, and all mostly captured through this camcorder. I feel like I learned the meaning of life through Marcel's journey, and it's a very good feeling, you know. Sometimes we just forget how us being human, capable of almost everything, and we suddenly just lost the purpose of life itself. But Marcel, though he is small, becoming a noble creature, like to take care of his family. Perhaps Marcel himself is more human than us. He knows the human value. What does it feel like? No, what does it mean to be human? Anyway, just don't watch this for the cuteness. Get a meaning on this film. Try to find the meaning, little meaning on this film. Number 2, the Banshees of Inisherin. What if one day your best friend asks you not to talk anymore with you? That's basically the whole premise in the Banshees of Inisherin, and what's make it harder, it's set in a small island of Ireland in the 1920s where phones doesn't exist, and life in a small island you find entertainment from social gathering. It's a very tragic story indeed, but Martin McDonagh, with his sharp and witty dialogue, just managed to make this film funny and heartwarming sometimes. But the core of the story itself is honestly very unpleasant. And all of the cast and crew, Colin Farrell, Brendan Gleeson, Kerry Condon, Barry Keoghan, all could balance between its light and heavy-hearted moments. On a personal level, it is a film that I could really relate so much, questioning a lot about the legacy of art. And me being a filmmaker as well, sometimes ask how far could I leave my legacy behind? And does that mean I should sacrifice my time with my closest ones to concentrate on creating my legacy? The theme of obsession are usually explored in films about obsessed artists, but rarely could we see this in the eye of people close to them. It's a very fresh perspective actually. And in this case, the person closest to him, the artist, Brendan Gleeson, are very exact opposite to the one we saw from Colin Farrell's perspective. And so the nature of conflict just becomes so clear, but it's just so hard which side should we actually be in. Like Martin McDonagh giving a debate in what we should accomplish in life, and both are true to an extent. The subtext that McDonagh created here, the message he tried to give, are actually very subtle, and I should praise for him depicting a part of history to a personal level. And by the end, I thought more of what will happen with the character rather than thinking about the message McDonagh is trying to give, the social criticism he's trying to give. That's the core of it. And the other aspect, the cinematography, score, technical, is near perfect for me. I really love this film, and the story is the one that still haunts me to this day, just like the title itself, The Banshee of Inisherin. Now, before going to my number 1 top pick, I would like to give an honorable mention to the film listed here. And there's just a lot to pick. And honestly, the honorable mention is more than 10. But I can't help to like these films in the year where lots of great films being produced. And this is not listed or ranked in any way. So the first one, we got Tar. Played magnificently by Cate Blanchett. Explored thoroughly by Todd Field about the culture we're living in the era of social media. While also introspect how power of authority does link to the cancel culture we're living now. A very balanced theme to look at the both perspective. And then we got All Quiet on the Western Front, another harrowing depiction of anti-war film where there are no heroes or villains in war, just victims, and how it impacts even the innocent mind who stands behind the front line. And I never really feel that emotionally in a war film, seeing two soldiers from different sides and the consequences that they have to face when they're just forced to kill each other. It's just so harrowing. And then Before, Now, and Then, or Nana, a very powerful feminist film from Indonesia, directed by Camila Andini, criticizing the patriarchy of men that's still as relevant and timeless even if it starts in the 1960s before Indonesian New Order, and give us an empowering look on what this woman could do, not through violence, but through understanding each other, even if they should have been on the opposite side. And then we got the Batman. Never we expected for a Batman film to reach similar level of Nolan's Dark Knight trilogy. Yet Matt Reeves accomplished the job, making the film a much darker, closer to the comic tone and atmosphere. And Robert Pattinson Batman, being new to this Batman role, heightened the audience expectation of what will come next and how the story will continue as The Dark Knight. The Northman, one of the most entertaining films of the year, and still Robert Eggers retained its Nordic value into a film that could be close to an art house film. It might not be perfect, but just kudos to the cinematography and the sound design, make it atmospheric and memorable to stick into the mind until the end of the year. And then we got The Menu. While I really think the critic do fall short a bit, The Menu made me very, very uncomfortable for the first time in a long time. And I can't applaud the creativity and effort it put into the cinematography and food design. Mark Millar really created a Hell's Kitchen that not only scary but also entertaining to an extent. And then Babylon, a film that perhaps too excessive to be on the top of the 10 list, but nevertheless benefited from Daniel Chazelle's auteur direction that made every aspect of the film work. And also, it's a very fresh new perspective to see the dark side of Hollywood in the 1920s for me, who doesn't really dive deep of the social interaction in the silent film era. While also you can see that it's a personal film for Damien Chazelle, who have a very love and hate relationship in Hollywood. And then we got Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio, a story that might be told several times, but nevertheless able to make a very fresh retelling of the story, with wooden stop-motion animation, fascist background that ripple the storytelling and shape the characters, making an emotional journey even if we had listened or watched this fairy tale over and over again. And then Close, a question about what happened when a child loses their innocence and their tenderness and tragically forces them asking questions about their own identity. And it was portrayed so well by the two young actors as well as the direction by Lucas Don. Nope, a film that's just a little too ambitious to be understood, but it should be noted how Jordan Peele is one of the best filmmakers working in the industry now. The theme and message he tried to deliver here are just next level about how spectacle really consumes us as the audience and the creator of spectacle himself. And don't forget the innovation that he made with Hoyte van Hoytema on the night cinematography that looks so realistic. And then we got Top Gun Maverick, a proof that nobody could stop Tom Cruise from doing crazy stunts, and also an unforgettable spectacle he put into the effort of filmmaking. Everything here just feels so real, and you can't help but to appreciate the effort they put into the film. All the cast need to learn how to direct their scene themselves to not fuck the shot, and it's perhaps a message to us how filmmaking is truly a collaborative thing. And lastly, we got Triangle of Sadness. While I really thought the third act was a downer, it was nevertheless a sharp social critique between the higher class and working class. And the critique itself is so sharp, and I can't help but to laugh a lot, especially the scene involving the ship captain and the Russian guy. Damn, that was just hilarious as shit, And Dolly DeLeon also gave a powerful performance, showing how she could how she could turn the table of the social hierarchy through other manner, and how power itself is just very, very scary to poke on. Ruben Östlund really is the master of creating this type of film to make a social criticism in dark comedy. And that's the honorable list. And now to the last film, number one film on this list, and definitely on my top films of all time. Everything, Everywhere, All at Once. Now, in the times where everybody become possessed with the concept of multiverse, EAO, or everything, everywhere, all at once, released at the exact time, at the right time. We saw how Marvel over the concept of multiverse, and honestly, EAO just pushes furthermore. But it's not why I love the film so much, but because it shows what film is still capable of. Written by both duo Daniel Studios, this is the most creative film that I've ever seen. film that just pushed beyond the boundaries on what not only stories could be, but also diverse theme it tells. It does feel like everything available all at once. Countless interviews already reported how they see this film like exploring the internet, and I can't really agree more. And while people say this is a very tiresome film, I do find that the stimulus is so important that it must be felt to understand the film more. And if you think this isn't enough, the action sequences, the music, the cinematography, the sound, oh my god, fuck, I'm just so speechless when I'm watching that. I actually don't really know how to reword this, and even if I watched the film multiple times already, and I really need to take a break on this. Where to start? The cast, damn, Michelle Yeoh just give a performance of a lifetime. Cause he quit 30 years after his break, and he really nailed not only one but three characters at the same time. And never I could imagine seeing Jamie Lee Curtis to play a fat Irish agent, and this is perhaps one of her most daring performance. Moving on to the action sequences, like really fun, imaginative. Like how could they use butt plugs for a fight sequence? How could the Daniels think about making the jump pad, making such a very absurd scene that make us laugh all the time? And if you think it's all just for the laugh, no, because in the core, it's really a tragedy film about a mother in an existential crisis of everything that happens in this life, just so fast, so hard to understand. And it also affects the daughter herself as well, finding that there's nothing really matter in this life. But the Daniels to be able turning something from very, very meaningless, from very nihilistic to something very empowering is just so unbelievable, very unthinkable. I cry every time, and I'm still looking forward to see the film again and again. Just so creative and inspiring in terms of messages and filmmaking itself, encouraging us to just push the boundaries in our life because nothing matters. This is very, very inspiring, really. A message that very inspire people. You really see how films like this changed a lot of my life. I mean, Two Wrongs managed to move my heart. How crazy that is. And I really think that we really need more films like this. We really should, actually. And this is one film is capable of. And it should be on the top of this list. No other film is on the top spot as much as this year is, because to be able giving a message to the mainstream moviegoer and to be able to give message as well to filmmaker like us. Like film, there's still a lot to be explored in film as well. Yeah, that's it for my top 10 list. EAO, number one. It really should be number one. And what do you think of this list? Do you agree with my list, or do you have any personal list of the best 2002 films? And I would like to hear your thoughts on the comments down below. And do please subscribe to a Cinema Land so you can follow my journey. That's it, everyone. I hope that you have a good day. Thank you for listening to this podcast. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night.